if you are wondering how AI is changing project management, then I invite you to stay with us. Welcome to the Project Success in an AI World podcast. I am Zenah Hemedan, the Director of Projects at the PMI Malta Potential Chapter, joined by Jonathan Spiteri, the chapter's Vice President. And today we have a special guest with us, Gareth Jones, the founder and CEO of Lightrise Consulting. Gareth brings valuable knowledge and experience in deploying AI in drive project success, and we're looking forward to hear his insights. Gareth, thank you for being us today. Can you please maybe give us some introduction about who you are, your background, and the business you're running?
Thank you very much for that warm introduction, Zenah. It's great to be here today. Yes, so I run a consultancy called Lightrise Consulting, which is something I built up from being a contractor initially, but prior to that, working for Microsoft Gold partners and in senior management teams in some of the world's best universities. Broad background of many different things, but a few years ago, I decided to go this alone, become a contractor, and since then I've built this into a larger international business using AI tools like Copilot to really help us. And my days in that role look like very different on a daily basis, juggling lots of different things or wearing lots of different hats and pretending to be in a different role, in a different phrase, in a different mindset at a different time, whether that's delivering for clients or leading the organization and thinking more strategically.
Very interesting, Gareth. And with your extensive experience leading and managing various projects, I'm sure that you have seen success taking different forms, especially that you are wearing these multiple hats. And success is defined differently by various people, right? And from your experience and within the industries that you have worked in, what does project success truly look like? And maybe you can also share with us some, key indicators that you believe define a successful project.
Sure, no, that's a great question, and a question which I don't think people ask enough. What does project success look like? Because that should be defined at the very start, whatever we're doing. It's usually a contractual obligation between professionals like yourselves and clients, and what that looks like, and you'd expect to see measures of success in there, and a lot of the time we are dealing with IT projects, and you'd expect there to be an IT element of that measurement of success, but also more crucially, people elements as well. And in terms of what that looks like, it's very, very different, really, and often comes down to what change looks like. And I think culturally at an institution level, an organization level, that can be very different. And I'm sort of sat here now talking, and I'm also thinking back to my master's, which was in development management. And if you think about this at an international context, then there are success measures there as well. In fact, there's a whole sort of framework, it's called a log framework, it's used by the World Bank and that sort of thing. And they have a very structured way of thinking of saying, oh, well, this is what success looks like. And when we fund projects, we're expecting to see people changes and how all of that ripples through. Unfortunately, we don't always see a lot of project what success is, and you might be inheriting all sorts of project management challenges, I think, and is often the way, certainly from like a consulting services, professional services point of view, and you might even need to take steps back to work out, I think, sometimes what project success looks like, and just say, what does it look like, and to try and break that down, I think, at a more granular level. So it might be a big picture item of change, But equally, there should be measurable deliverables throughout, like stepping stones, essentially, on how you get there. And what it looks like when it's successful, because obviously that's all well and good, isn't it? Moving towards goals and those sorts of things. But the reality of what it looks like on the ground, well, it is when everyone knows what project success looks like, and they're all signed up to that one view, really, of it. And that's a big communications, a people piece again. Making sure there's alignment, making sure that everyone knows what part that they play in achieving that project success. I think that's key as well. And when you get those two things mixing well together, you've got the right culture, then that's like not just project success, but project awesomeness, I would say, because that's when everything's running smoothly, right? So yeah, all sorts of versions of it there, but hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I mean, different projects would have different project success matrices, let's put that way. And communication definitely helps a lot in ensuring that everyone is working towards the same goals. And these matrices changes based on several factors, based on culture that you have mentioned, based on the project itself. And nowadays also, these are based on AI. And we have seen how AI is significantly impacting, for example, decision making and resource allocation, just to name a few. And in your particular field, because obviously you have different experiences in different industries and wearing different hats. So how do you see AI having the most impact on these matrices for project success?
Another great question, and this is all very current, really. I mean, we're talking about AI, although the reality is it's machine learning, and that's been around for a long time, but its practical implications of it have only really come to the fore, I think, in the last couple of years. And I think we can all see the significant changes that AI has brought to all roles. And in terms of impacting project success, I think the challenge for us is to keep up to date with the new tooling, the new techniques, but bring value into practical applications within a project. And some of the ways that we've seen things evolving in this area and started to use is actually speeding up the creation of deliverables. When it comes to plans, when it comes to communications, it can be used as a springboard for every single role within a project to fast pace the creation of a deliverable. And it could be code, it could be anything really, because I know we've had the greatest library at our fingertips in terms of the internet for some time. You know, AI's kind of made it useful, and you know, we can access these information in a natural language way, and it's providing us with tabulated results. I've seen some other than the fundamental thing which we can all access with things like Copilot and Perplexity and ChatGPT. You know, what I'm also seeing is this next level up, and AI getting embedded within the actual tools itself. And you know, it is replacing some of the tasks that project managers would typically undertake, such as the creation of project risk reports or status review decks, which is amazing in terms of a quality perspective and having a standard thing, but it doesn't remove the need for project managers. What it does need do is it creates demand for project managers who grow quickly, move quickly, are able to say, look, these are the outputs, take the standard outputs, and then add in and layer in the critical thinking, the contextual piece, the quality checking, because you can't rely on these things. I've seen some pretty good things coming out of them, but I've seen some rubbish as well, and you need to be very careful, because it can look like convincing rubbish, but it does need that human element again to make sure. But the people I've spoke to where I thought roles would be completely replaced, people like copywriters and that sort of thing, they've not replaced, they've just increased the amount of projects which they're doing. Their throughput has increased. Now I don't know how that works out for their work-life balance, but that's a personal thing we'll have to manage. But the reality is they're increasing their amount of work using artificial intelligence as opposed to being replaced by it.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned the increasing productivity by using AI, increasing speed, but also the importance of the human element on that. And I'm glad that you tackle the concern that many people have. So many people are skeptical about the use of AI. They think that AI will take their roles. So I'm happy that you mentioned this combination. So with that, I mean, we're clear now, AI and human need to work together. Where do you think project management experts can still add value and make an impact in project management in the world of AI?
I think bringing, as a profession, those professionals bringing all their expertise, as always, and thinking about how they can bring their best selves to the AI debate and guide people through their project management lens on how to make the most of the tools available. Because the reality is there's so many tools available that it's very difficult to keep up with all the tools, and it changes on a monthly basis almost. But it can be quite scary. But I think just adopting some of these standard things, whether it's your favorite project operations tool, or just something low entry like Copilot, ChatGPT, Perplexity, those sorts of things, asking it questions, trying to reduce the amount of effort that it typically takes to undertake things in a project. Because the reality is, and I think this is probably true, and I'll be challenged by it, and then obviously it's a generalism. So there's always going to be, but there's a lot of projects and a lot of detail, and all of that tends to be centered around the technology, and it's not sent. And we always know there's bits missing, but we always know that the people buying the professional project management services should probably be buying a bit more, because there's so much more that needs to be done. And there's this horrible statistic around 90% of IT projects fail. And the reason they fail is because they don't have good project management, and there's lots of bits around the success which aren't managed against. And we're only scratching the surface of it, really. So the more time that we've got available as project managers, the more success we can essentially create, I think. And that's where project managers, by being adaptable, having that growth mindset, moving forwards and guiding people with the tools that are there, that's where I think people are starting to look for the value. But equally, you need to stick to your principles, your values. We are human beings, and it doesn't matter whether it's a technology project or a building project or marketing projects are run in similar ways, and that they have outputs, but equally it's all people behind these things. So
yeah, in fact, what concerns me most, Gareth, is that unfortunately most leaders tend to forget the people side, and they focus on technology rather than who is going to drive those projects to success. And now I might be biased because I always try to put the people at the center of each and every initiative, each and every change. But I was reading this recent study that mentioned that around 70% of project success is attributed to the people involved. I personally believe that it's higher than that, especially in the world of AI, when there are so many things that people need to take care of to deliver a project. Now, from your experience, is that correct? Is the 70% correct, or do you think it should be higher or maybe lower?
I think I've seen the same report as well, actually. You've got to be careful with statistics because they're never right ultimately. But I think it's a useful barometer, really, to say, around 70%. I think some could be higher, some could be lower. It depends on the approach as well. But the larger the project, the more encompassing the change element needs to be, because people form part of processes, and ultimately, whatever the project is and its success, you will need people to run through a lot of that. And I hear what you're saying, and I've seen a lot of this as well, where people are focused on the technology success deliverables, which are very, very important. But the risk of doing so, and we probably don't manage risks enough, but the risk of doing that is that it doesn't matter we're at 60, 70, 80, 90%. It's still a big proportion of the success of a project. And you really need to think about things like adoption. Are people going to use it? That as a success as a factor. If they are going to use it, how are they going to consume it? I go back to IT projects again, but it could be, it could be a phone, it could be a laptop, it could be a hologram maybe in the future, who knows? It could be all sorts of things. And we need to think through that lens and go, well, actually, if we've got the technology right and person X doesn't pick up the phone and use it, or they find it useful to do it, and actually, maybe we need to measure joy and things like that. But certainly the experience, and that is interesting, because if we go back to that international level again, there are some indices looking at the happiness indexes and think it's not all money. There's other measures of success in an international context as well. But yeah, certainly I would encourage everyone to start thinking, okay, even if it's like, what's the minimum amount of change needed to support people through? And I've always thought it's a lost opportunity in an organization that people don't draw their people department into those conversations, or what you might call a HR department into those conversations, because I think together with strong project managers, bringing that element together around change, and those people obviously know, the organizational context, and it goes back to, you need a lot of people to make change successful. Really, you need people to understand what the success looks like, be positive in the steps to get there, and a variety of things. And I said, there's too much work for project managers to do, really. And that's why AI can really only be a good thing in enabling us all to have a bit more time and to focus on the things which we know we should have been focusing on, which is probably the reason that 90% of IT projects fail in the first place. So hopefully we do see this shift and we see the more freeing up of time and we can do these things. And it's not just a rather cynical, let's save X amount of money because we know that technology can automate, because isn't AI great? Well, yes, it is, but it's going to be a poor culture from many change perspectives if you take a blunter view of that. But I know that there are organizations out there, but I would, there's other ways of doing it. You can think about this in terms of the skilling up of your strongest assets in an organization, which are your people in many places, bringing them on the journey and not making AI scary, because it really doesn't need to be. This whole sort of co-pilot term, I like the term helper. It's a helper. It's something that's going to help you. All the rubbishy things that you've had to do that you were juggling before, suddenly you can do a lot more efficiently because you've got this helper constructing things along the way. And yeah, we need to think about these tools as being genuine enablers, because if you start using them, that's actually what they are.
I think that's very much aligned with a previous podcast of the PMI Malta chapter, where we spoke about project success and the success criteria. And we spoke about moving away from the traditional success criteria of delivering within the time, budget, and resources, and consider the value that we are delivering to the people. So in AI, it's the same. I mean, regardless of which tools we are using, we can measure the success based on the value that it will give to the people that will adopt it. Again, implementing a tool that the one will use it shouldn't be considered as a success project.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I'll have to catch up on that one.
We'll share the link with you. That was a really interesting discussion, Gareth. It brings us to the end of this part. We know that there is a following part. So first, let me thank you to share your experience, Gareth, and go through a number of examples, number of topics. Jonathan, thank you for joining me in this discussion. For our audience, we will have part 2, a continuation of this discussion. We'll continue with Gareth diving into managing risks in AI projects. We will speak about some challenges, how to effectively manage them, and then we'll probably give some lessons learned and some advices. I hope that everyone enjoys this episode. Stay tuned for part 2.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.